Here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson, your host, speaking at you from Sunday, December 7th, 2025 in the space and time continuum. It is the anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, which ended up getting the United States of America to finally be involved in World War II. Ironically, that attack was perpetuated by the Japanese, and the focus in the early days of our involvement in World War II was in the European theater, where Hitler and his Nazis were trying to take over the world. Now, we fought that war over in Europe back then. Now, we're fighting it here in America. The current day Nazis are Vladimir Putin and the Russians. They wanted to destroy American democracy, and they found their crew. And their crew is the Trump administration, starting with Donald Trump. On this show, we're not afraid to call things what they really are. Stephen Miller is a Nazi. Stephen Miller, of course, is one of the advisors, quote unquote, of the quote-unquote president of the United States, Donald Trump, who this week was talking again about the fat drug. We're going to make the price of the fat drug. Tim, are you taking the fat drug? Because if you're taking it, it's not working, is what I'm saying. It's not. If you're taking it, it is not working. The fat drug. We're going to bring it down 500, 600, 700%. 800%, 900%. They were going to pay you $900 if you get the fat drug, if you want to take the fat drug. It's not working over there on Tim. I can't do that voice without screwing up my throat. And I'm glad to say that I think that impersonation of Trump was not as good as it has been in the past. And that's because I'm out of practice. And that's a good thing, especially if you ask Heidi, my wife, or my daughter Eve. They never want to hear me do that imitation again. However, my friend Doug thinks I should do it. So sorry, Doug, that I didn't do it as well as I usually do. What are we going to talk about this week? You know, things really are shifting. I see it very apparent, even in a major way, starting this weekend. And I'm talking about media. Now, I am more pissed off at mainstream media, is what you could call it, but really it's corporate media. And corporations still think they need to kowtow to Donald Trump. I don't know, that term kowtow, is it kowtow? Kowtow? I don't know. That's interesting. I should look into that. I love that kind of stuff. How did that come about? You know, that. Anyway, the reason I say it's shifting, well, first of all, I'm so sick of hearing, like on MSNBC, this week they're talking about the strikes in the Caribbean by Pete Kegbreath and, of course, by Donald Trump. And they're trying to make another guy into, Admiral Bradley into the scapegoat here. But we're all hearing that Admiral Bradley is lawyering up. He sees that he's about to be the patsy. I think he's going to try and salvage his career. We'll see what happens. I think there's going to be war tribunals. Again, going back to a term we didn't use since the Second World War, pretty much, at least in this country or in the Western civilization, for the most part. And I think Kegbreath is going to be in big trouble. I think Donald Trump's going to be dead by then. But historically, he will be part of these things. Posthumously, he will be part of these things and then go down in history as, many things. really all he is an amateur mob boss. You know, he's demonstrated he has the power to make people disappear in different ways. That's not what we're here to talk about. I was saying that on MSNBC, they'll have like General McCafferty, and he'll come on, and nothing against him, but, you know, really, he'll come on and be like, yeah, well, you know, I mean, at least this is a nefarious thing that's going on. At the very least, at the most, I say it's probably a war crime. But yeah, and I think that because they have to talk for 24 hours on MSNBC and all these other places. I guess it's not MSNBC anymore. It's now called MS Now. Anyway, CNN, all these places, they have to keep talking for 24 hours. Really, so many of the things that are going on are absolutely the most blown out, atrocious, scary, horrific, criminal, vile, disgusting, anti-American things going on. But there are so many of them. Why are they not talking more about the ICE raids? Because they're not talking about that enough. They just keep repeating, oh, at least this is nefarious. At most, it's a war crime, what Kegbreath is doing by blowing innocent people out of boats, blowing up boats. They have, and maybe they're not innocent people completely, but what they're being charged with is definitely not what they're doing. Definitely not what they're doing. They're saying that these little boats are bringing drugs directly to the United States. And by blowing up a couple of these small boats that have like 2 outboard motors on them, they're killing 100,000 people about every 10 minutes. Many people say every 10 minutes. Every 10 minutes, it's about 100,000. He doesn't really talk like that anymore. Now he just talks like this. Where was I? Okay, at least nefarious. No. It is, at the very least, it is murder. Now, when you say it's a war crime, we're not at war. So it's just ruthless murdering, like the mob does. They're not even killing these people because these people are posing a threat. They're killing these people to go on video and talk about how tough they are and show the American people, like, here's what we're doing. Joe Biden didn't do this, man. We're taking these people and just blowing them out of the water. The second video, which they won't release for some reason, has been reported to show the 2 survivors. I think you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, just sing a song in your head for a few seconds. But the second hit on the September 2nd blowing up of the boat, where there were apparently 2 survivors, and then there was a second hit to kill those 2 guys. They were apparently standing on the top of the boat wreckage, waving their hands, either for rescue or surrender. And then we blew them up. If we were at war, that would be a war crime, and Kegbreath would go through a war tribunal and be thrown in prison for the rest of his life. We're not at war. So that's just blatant murder, in which case Kegbreath maybe won't be going through a war tribunal, but he should be prosecuted for mass murder because he's killed now. Last I heard was something like 76 people total in more than 20 boats being blown out of the water. There's no proof that there were drugs on the boat. There's no proof that the people were criminals whatsoever. If it was suspected that there were drugs on the boat, then the Coast Guard should go out there, stop them, and arrest them. That's how things work. But Trump thinks he's a mob boss, and Kegbreath is just too fucking stupid to realize what the hell is going on around him. And now you've heard me talk about it for too long. But I'm saying it's cut and dry. This is murder. It's not nefarious conduct, all right? It's murder. And then we move on to the next topic because there's more criminal things going on here. We're going to get to The Trump administration is blatantly working for Russia. They're not even trying to cover it up anymore. I'm going to read you something that Heather Cox Richardson wrote that is pretty amazing. We're going to be doing a few things about Heather Cox Richardson. I'm going to start that right now. She is somebody who's a very serious historian. She doesn't speculate like I do. She doesn't say things like, we know Charlie Kirk wasn't really assassinated by the guy they're saying he was. We know that no bullet hit Donald Trump's ear. Maybe she has said that, but she doesn't speculate about things like that. She does it in a journalistic way. She's very careful, but she's going pretty far. This is part of why I'm saying she is seeping into the mainstream. Here is one quote from Heather Cox Richardson from November 4th.
A lot of you seem incredibly unsettled by the craziness that is coming at us. And you should be. The reason I gave you that big framework, I was talking about light brights. Once you recognize that this is where we are, we're in the end game of a 40 to 50 year movement that was designed to get rid of American democracy and get rid of a government that worked for all of us. And we're reaching the end of that, where you have this all-powerful president who has lost it, and all these people who think they're better than the rest of us trying madly to run a system that they don't understand and doing a terrible job of. What that tells you is that this is the moment for Americans, for people like you and me, to say enough and to take our country back.
That's Heather Cox Richardson saying things very similar to what I've been saying. The 40 to 50 year plan by the Republicans to basically ruin America. And it has come to fruition. But she's starting to point out here that the people who are doing it don't know what they're doing. I'm going to play another clip at the beginning after we take a break in a couple minutes here, where she points that out even further. And there are other people talking about the fact that now they've gotten to the bottom of the barrel. This is another thing I've been saying for a long time. All of the brain power has left the Republican Party. The darkness has no brain power left. The potent darkness has left the earth. And now the darkness is just holding on by a few fingers, and those fingers are falling away. And things are really coming to a head right now. I'm also later on going to give you a few more developments about what's going on in the Ukraine and Russian war. That's another part of this complete crumbling of the dark and the darkness leaving the earth. That's just sort of a symbolistic way of putting it. This is very important stuff. The war in Ukraine, if the Kremlin is really having trouble, really struggling right now, and Putin is afraid that he's going to be assassinated the moment the war ends. That's the only reason he's trying to keep the war going. And he's got America on his side. And Europe can see this now. Again, we're going to talk more about this after the break. It's quite astonishing because Stephen Miller, the Nazi I mentioned before, he thinks everyone agrees with him, whereas nobody does, even the people around him. They're in a tizzy right now because they don't know what to do with Trump, because he is too sick in his mind mostly to even be able to speak anymore, yet he insists on speaking every day. Like I said, the whole, we're going to reduce the price by 700%. You can't do that. That's impossible. The most you can reduce the price of something is 100%, upon which you make it free. So if you reduce it by 700%, that would mean that you're paying, if something cost $1, now when you buy that $1 thing, you get paid $700. That's what that means. But Trump is too stupid to know that. I don't know if he was always, I think he always was that stupid, but now he's also got dementia. And that's being talked about a lot, and it's really getting to him and the administration. Nothing is able to be sustained by this administration anymore. And that's the big shift that people are seeing. All these revelations. Europe is warning Zelensky, don't be alone in the room with Jared Kushner. and Steve Witkoff, or really any American. Don't go around those people. They are dangerous to you because they are working for the Kremlin. We talked about this in past episodes about the 28-point plan, which is the Kremlin wrote it and gave it to Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. They translated it using a crappy translation, whatever people think is Google Translate. And there's obviously sentences in there that would have been written originally in Russian. And then they tried to say, this is the American response. And then the supposed Secretary of State, who's really supposed to be the guy having the meetings, he said, what? What is this? No, this isn't the American response. I know nothing about this. So they're not even communicating with each other. It's in shambles, and it's because it's ran by idiots. And we're going to talk more about that and some other very interesting things when we come back from a short break. You're listening to A Satellite View. We'll be right back. And we're back on A Satellite View. Find our website, satelliteviewpodcast.com. Go to our YouTube channel by going to YouTube and searching for Satellite View Podcast. Subscribe. We're picking up some subscribers over the last couple weeks. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is free, and it helps us get the word out to more people, which is happening a lot. I'm getting very interesting comments on different things, like different little segments that are put out. Whenever I'm talking about what's going on in Ukraine and that Russia is crumbling, wow, do the bots come out. They call me all kinds of names, and they, say that I'm a liar and all this stuff. Wow, very defensive. Very defensive. When I talk about most other things, I get a lot of actual, agreement comments and people thanking me for saying it. So that's part of the shift, actually, that's going on. But here's another part of the shift. Also, you can follow me on Instagram, at Todd Mikkelson. You can also follow me on Blue Sky or Twitter, all at Todd Mikkelson. This is going to be more Heather Cox Richardson talking about this shift. Now, this is interesting because Nicole Wallace, who has a show on MSNBC, which is now called MS Now. Her show is called Deadline White House. I think it's one of the best shows. I think there's 4 good shows, and that's one of them. Still not good enough. Still not going to a lot of places that I think media needs to be going. But Nicole Wallace has started a podcast. It's called All the Best People, I think, and she has a different guest on. She had Heather Cox Richardson, who I think is one of the all-time best people. Heather Cox Richardson, you should follow her. She's a historian, and she's got great perspective on things. So this is her on the Nicole Wallace podcast being replayed on the Stephanie Miller show. Stephanie Miller is a longtime, I'm a huge fan of hers, have been for more than 20 years. And she is a progressive radio host, and she's playing this segment on her show. And it just happens to be from the Nicole Wallace podcast. So you're going to hear Nicole Wallace's voice at the beginning, and then you're going to hear Heather Cox Richardson.
And I just love centering on what is happening in the country. And obviously, Democrats ran the tables. They won everywhere, and they won by these huge margins. But I want to come back to understanding what you see happening in the country right now.
Well, so let's start right there. I'm not sure Democrats ran the tables. I think the American people ran the tables.
Totally.
And
Yes.
that's a really different kettle of fish, if you think about it, because if you look at the results in places like New Jersey, there was an election that people looked very closely at a district in New Jersey, and it was very clear from the numbers, but that was not just Democrats turning out. That was not just Democrats and Republicans turning out. That was not just Democrats, Republicans, and independents turning out, but that some of the people who crossed the aisle were MAGA voters. And I think that we are seeing the end of at least a 40-year era in American history. We are realigning in a lot of different ways. We're seeing dramatic changes in both political parties. And I don't predict the future. I predict the past, if you will. But where we are looks a great deal like the periods in our history when we have reclaimed democracy and built something more inclusive on the other side.
Wow. From a historian's perspective. Very interesting. And then Stephanie Miller and another guest go on further to talk about how dumb this administration is. And that's part of the reason why it's all falling apart for them is because they don't understand what the hell they're doing. They're letting way too much information out there. So here's Heather Cox Richardson. She's on Substack. It's called Letters from an American. This is her writing on Friday, December 5th, 2 days ago. Late last night, the Trump administration released the 2025 National Security Strategy, NSS, of the United States of America. It did so quietly, although the release of the NSS is usually accompanied by fanfare, as it shows an administration's foreign policy priorities and the way it envisions the position of the U.S. in the world. The Trump administration's NSS announces a dramatic reworking of the foreign policy the U.S. has embraced since World War II. After a brief introduction touting what it claims are the administration's great successes, which we all know was probably, I haven't read this NSS, but we all know that was bullshit, right? We solved many wars. We got $17 trillion from the tariffs. The document begins by announcing the U.S. will back away from the global engagements that underpin the rules-based international order that the World War II allies put in place after that war to prevent another world war. The authors of the document claim that the system of institutions like the United Nations, alliances like the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, a free trade between nations that established a series of rules for foreign engagement and a web of shared interests around the globe has been bad for the U.S. because it undermined, quote, the character of our nation. Okay? This is Nazi Stephen Miller, obviously, concocting this. Their vision of, quote, our country's inherent greatness and decency requires the restoration and reinvigoration of American spiritual and cultural health. An America that cherishes its past glories and its heroes, and that looks forward to a new golden age and growing numbers of strong traditional families that raise healthy children. That's just weird. It's just getting weird. Okay, unquote. That was all quoted from the NSS. Now, going on with Heather's writing, observers referred to the document as National Security Council Report, or NSC 88, and noted that it could have been written in just 14 words. Now, she points out, white supremacists use 88 to refer to Adolf Hitler, and 14 words to refer to a popular white supremacist slogan. To achieve their white supremacist country, the document's authors insist they will not permit, quote, transnational and international organizations or foreign powers or entities to undermine U.S. sovereignty. To that end, they reject immigration as well as the disastrous climate change and net zero ideologies that have so greatly harmed Europe, threatened the United States, and subsidize our adversaries. That's their quote. Okay, that's what they're claiming. Think people like NATO, organizations like NATO. I'm going to go on a little further here. The document reorients the U.S. away from traditional European allies toward Russia. The authors reject Europe's current course, suggesting that Europe is in danger of, quote, civilizational erasure, unquote, and calling for the U.S. to, quote, help Europe correct its current trajectory by restoring Europe's civilizational self-confidence and Western identity, unquote. What the hell are you talking about? Allowing continued migration will render Europe unrecognizable within 20 years, it says. And they back away from NATO by suggesting that as they become more multicultural, Europe's societies might have a different relationship to NATO than, quote, those who signed the NATO Charter, unquote. Is that just like going back in time, like only the old? Yeah, I don't know. In contrast to their complaints about the liberal democracies in Europe, the document's authors do not suggest that Russia is a country of concern to the U.S., a dramatic change from past NSS documents. Instead, they complain that Europe officials hold unrealistic expectations for an end to Russia's war against Ukraine, and that European governments are suppressing far-right political parties. Oh, that's a complaint now? In this document, basically the authors, who is the Trump administration, bows to Russian demands by calling for ending the perception and preventing the reality of NATO as a perpetually expanding alliance. The rest of it is really great. Go to find Heather Cox Richardson on Substack and subscribe to her Letters from an American. But wow, it's just blatant America supporting Russia now. That's what it is. Just to let you know, right now Ukraine is in charge of Crimea. They've basically taken it back already. Now, here's some other things. Netanyahu asked for a pardon from the president of Israel. That is a last-ditch, desperate effort to save his ass because he can see prison in his near future. Not just for him, but his wife, too. All kinds of corruption and fraud. Both he and his wife have been basically convicted of, and you got to check me on that. I don't know that they've been completely convicted, but I know that they will be convicted, and he seems to know he's going to be convicted. Why would you ask for a pardon when the conflict, or whatever you want to call it, between Gaza and Israel ends? Netanyahu is set for prison, and he knows it, and that's why he asked for a pardon. Are you kidding me? And I still see Netanyahu, Putin, and Trump as a threesome going down. Okay, that came out wrong. A threesome going down. I didn't. Going down together in flames. All right. Here's another thing. Beer sales of like Corona beer are way down because Trump is removing their customer base. And that's, of course, how corporate media reports it, because it's sort of tied to race, right? But really, sales of everything are going down. They say that, oh, is record-breaking money spent on Black Friday, yet there were less products bought. So in one regard, there was way less shopping being done on Black Friday, but there was more money spent because everything's more expensive. Oh my God. Also, Megyn Kelly claimed that she wants to see that video of the two people getting killed, and she hopes she can see them suffer. She wants to watch them bleed out slowly, I think is how she put it. Talk about the darkness taking over your soul if you have one, or maybe you were born as something that doesn't have a soul. Megyn Kelly, what the hell are you doing? You just trying to get clicks, or are you really... I almost said some things that I could never take back. Are you really that bad of a person? I will put it. Now, we're in this season, right? I'm just skipping ahead here. We've run out of time already. Seems like we were just getting started. I hope I've brought you some things that were helpful that you didn't know about. But the shift in what people are starting to focus on, of course, there's still too much focus on this thing with Keg's breath, and that's why they're stretching it out. That's why the administration's handling it the way they are. That's why they're not firing Pete Keg's breath, because it's distracting us from the Epstein files that lawfully must be put out by Pam Bondi by the 20th of December. Okay? That's not far away. So things are really coming to a head. Also, Jack Smith on the 17th of December is going to be testifying to Congress. Sadly, it will be behind closed doors, but if he agreed to do it, you know he's going to be presenting things that are undeniable. We already saw the behind the closed doors on the Keg's breath thing, and people like Tom Cotton, Republican senator, trying to spin it in a certain way, and he's already been shot out of the sky, even just this morning on TV shows, that basically he was lying in what he saw in the video. So I think Jack Smith is going to be presenting things that cannot be spun by the Republicans. I think it's going to be absolutely devastating. It's going to having to do with the Trump stealing documents and keeping them. And we all know that he has sold American top secrets to other countries for money. We all know that. You and I know that. Now that's what I want to talk about. Don't think about it. I don't want to know what you think about that. I want to know how you feel about that. Donald Trump had thousands of pages of top secret documents in Mar-a-Lago after his presidency. They were found there. They were there. Undeniable. Now, a journalist can't say, oh, well, Donald Trump sold it to other countries. But when you go inside yourself, why did Donald Trump have those? Is he interested in them? Does he like to read them because he thinks they're interesting? No, he doesn't read. How do you feel? Do you feel like, yeah, he probably sold them or definitely sold? I feel like he definitely sold them. So we're here in this season now. I've got this sweater on because it is cold in Minnesota. It's like the old days, actually. It used to get cold in December. Now it kind of doesn't get, it gets cold for a few minutes, like in February now. But now it's been below zero here, on and off for over a week already in December. Really nice, pretty snow outside. We're all cozy in our house. It's feeling really nice. And take this time to enjoy this holiday season. But don't do it because you need to buy presents. Don't think about gifts. Don't think about, religious things. How organized religion has basically stolen the Yule celebration, from Northern Europe. When it just gets cold and people celebrate because there's nothing else to do. You're done planting your crops and you just need to stay warm. So you all gather in the bar and you burn the Yule log and people get drunk and have fun together. It's a gathering. It's gathering. And the sun is coming back because the solstice happens, I believe, on the 20th this year. And then that's the longest period of dark here in the Northern Hemisphere. And then the sun comes back. The sun returns. S-U-N is what we're talking about. Anyway, we don't need to talk about how organized religion basically stole the winter solstice celebration. By the way, I have nothing against people who are who participate in organized religion. You find what's for you. I want you to do what feels good for you. And that's the point I'm trying to make here. Handle this holiday season in the way that feels the best for you. And people are going more into how they feel about things. And that's why people are rising up. Like Heather Cox Richardson said, the people are rising up and we're saying, that's enough. We have had enough. And now we are using our power to bring this shit down. And it is working. your work is working. What you're doing is working. So let's stick together and support each other through doing this. Right now, let's take it easy and enjoy each other, our families, friends in this holiday season. Take some downtime. It's cold. It's the darkest part of the year. Literally, we have less sunlight at this part of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. So we're supposed to slow down and just enjoy the simplest parts of life. And as far as politics goes, be careful. Don't listen to too much news. And find other news. Find Heather Cox Richardson online. Go to Midas Touch Network. They will give you what you need to know. You don't need to listen to 24 hours of people saying, at least it's nefarious, and at the most I think it could be construed as a war crime. I'll try and think of more words to make my point to take a much longer period of time than it really needs to take, because I know we basically need to be filling 24 hours a day with just blah, 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 blah. You don't need to listen to that. There are people who put up just the pertinent clips online. So be careful. Don't let the news freak you out. And use less of your brain and more of your, your heart. Just go to how you feel. Think about how you feel about things. And, have a balance. I'm not telling you to completely turn your brain off. If you're going to drive a car, you need to use parts of your brain still. But, you know what I mean. So, anyway, I'm going on. Now, talk about blabbering on. Okay, I apologize for that. Let's you and I stick together. Thank you so much for joining me here. And I hope that I've brought you some things that help you in your week ahead. And I will speak at you next week.
You've been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mikkelson. Go to toddmikkelson.com for links and more information.